You were told freedom is the highest good, the dream of nations, the goal of revolutions, the promise of modern life, freedom to choose, freedom to speak, freedom to live as you wish. But what if I told you that freedom, the very thing you think you want, terrifies you more than you realize? What if the weight of freedom is the very reason you feel anxious, restless, and lost? Fromm argued that the modern human is not enslaved by chains, but by choices. You no longer live in a world where your role is assigned, where tradition dictates your every move. You are free, and yet you are not at peace. Because freedom is not only liberation, it is responsibility, and responsibility, when faced fully, is terrifying. Think about it. Every day you are told you can be anything. You can choose your career, your partner, your beliefs, your destiny. At first, this sounds exhilarating. But then reality hits. Every choice carries risk. Every decision carries weight. You cannot blame fate, or tradition, or authority. You must carry the burden yourself. And somewhere deep inside, you feel the pressure. What if I choose wrong? What if I fail? What if I waste my freedom? This is the hidden problem of modern life. You wanted freedom, but once you have it, you don't know what to do with it. And so you escape. You surrender. You run back into the arms of illusions that make life simpler. You conform. You obey. You distract yourself because freedom feels like too much. Fromm called this the escape from freedom. He claimed that human beings do not always want freedom as much as they say. They want security, direction, certainty. They want someone or something to tell them what to do, who to be, how to live. They want the burden lifted from their shoulders. And if you are honest, you have felt this too. That secret desire to let someone else decide. That quiet relief when a rule tells you what's right. That moment of surrender when you follow the crowd, not because you agree, but because it feels safer than standing alone. You think you are free, but in truth, you are escaping the very freedom you claim to love. The cost of this escape is enormous. You lose authenticity. You lose individuality. You lose the very self that freedom was supposed to unleash. You may appear free, but inside you are chained by conformity, by fear, by the need to belong. You become a prisoner in disguise. Look around. Why do people drown themselves in distraction, endless scrolling, shallow entertainment, constant busyness? Because silence would force them to face freedom. Silence would force them to see that no one is coming to live their life for them. And that realization terrifies. Why do people cling to rigid ideologies, to authoritarian leaders, to strict rules? Because freedom is overwhelming. They prefer obedience over responsibility. They prefer the illusion of safety over the burden of choice. And why do you sometimes sabotage yourself, procrastinate, or avoid making decisions? Because the weight of freedom presses down. You fear being the author of your own life, so you delay, hoping someone else will decide for you. Fromm saw this with chilling clarity. The modern human escaped the external chains of history only to build internal chains of their own. You are free, but you don't know how to bear it. And here lies the paradox. Freedom, the very condition that could liberate you, is the same condition that enslaves you with fear, because once you are free, there is no one left to blame. No master, no tradition, no God to dictate every detail. You stand alone, and many cannot bear the loneliness of freedom. But here is the deeper truth. The fear of freedom is not a flaw in you. It is a universal human struggle. It is part of the human condition. Everyone feels it. The difference is what you do with it. Do you escape? Do you run into conformity, authority, distraction? Do you numb yourself and pretend freedom is not yours? Or do you face it? Do you bear the burden, accept the responsibility, and choose to live authentically despite the fear? This is the question that defines your life. Because until you face the fear of freedom, you are not truly free. You are only performing freedom while secretly running from it. Fromm's insight was radical. He showed that the hidden cost of modern liberty is anxiety, and that anxiety drives you to escape into new forms of bondage. You think you are free, but you are not. You are chained by your refusal to accept the responsibility that freedom demands. So ask yourself now, are you truly free, or are you running from freedom? Because in the next part, we will dive deeper into the ways you escape. We will uncover Fromm's three great strategies of escape: conformity, authoritarianism, and destructiveness. And once you see these forces at work in your life, you will never mistake them for freedom again. Freedom is a paradox. You fight for it, celebrate it, dream of it, yet once you hold it, you feel its weight, and for many the burden is unbearable. Fromm believed that when faced with the terror of true freedom, most people do not embrace it. They flee from it. They trade freedom for illusions of security. He called these escapes from freedom. The first escape is conformity. Look at your own life. How often have you changed your behavior, your opinions, even your values, just to fit in? You tell yourself it's harmless. You say you're just being flexible, just adapting, but deep down, you know the truth. You're afraid to stand alone. Conformity is the silent surrender of the self. You merge with the crowd. You wear the mask everyone approves of. You think like they think, laugh at what they laugh at, love what they love. You become invisible, not because no one sees you, but because the real you is buried under layers of imitation. And conformity is seductive. It feels safe. When you agree with the majority, you don't have to carry the burden of your own judgment. You don't have to risk rejection. You don't have to face the terror of being different. But what you gain in safety, you lose in authenticity. The price of belonging is yourself. Fromm saw conformity everywhere in modern life. He warned that people no longer think independently. They consume opinions, adopt trends, and parrot beliefs without reflection. The illusion of choice hides the reality of conformity. You think you are choosing freely, but in truth, you are just selecting from the limited menu society offers. You know this feeling, that subtle pressure to dress a certain way, to speak a certain way, to hold the right opinions. The fear that if you deviate, you'll be excluded, and so you conform. You silence the voice inside that dares to be different, and in doing so, you escape the responsibility of freedom. The second escape is authoritarianism. If conformity is dissolving yourself into the crowd, authoritarianism is surrendering yourself to power. You give up freedom not by blending in, but by bowing down. You hand over responsibility to leaders, ideologies, systems that promise certainty. You say, tell me what to do, tell me what to believe, take the burden from me. Fromm saw this in history, in the rise of fascism, in the submission to dictators, in the blind obedience to authority. But he also saw it in everyday life. People longing for strong leaders, rigid rules, structures that relieve them of the weight of freedom. The attraction of authoritarianism is not only about power, it is about relief. Relief from having to decide, relief from being alone. And authoritarianism comes in two forms: domination and submission. Some seek power to escape weakness, others submit to power to escape responsibility. Both are driven by the same fear, the fear of freedom. You've seen this too. In relationships where one partner controls and the other obeys. In workplaces where bosses dominate and employees comply, even against their own judgment. In communities where people surrender to tradition, not because they believe in it, but because questioning it feels terrifying. Authoritarianism feels safe, but it is slavery disguised as order. You no longer stand as a free being. You become a tool, a follower, a shadow of someone else's will. And yet, many choose it willingly, because the weight of responsibility feels heavier than the chains of obedience. The third escape is destructiveness. When freedom feels unbearable, and when neither conformity nor authoritarianism provide relief, some people choose destruction. Fromm argued that if you cannot bear to carry the burden of freedom, you may try to eliminate it altogether, in yourself or in others. Destructiveness can take many forms. It can be violence, cruelty, oppression, but it can also be subtle: cynicism, sabotage, self-destruction, the addict who numbs themselves, the critic who tears down others, the pessimist who poisons every dream. Each is a way of escaping freedom by refusing to live fully. At its core, destructiveness is the refusal to face the terror of choice. If freedom feels unbearable, you destroy what reminds you of it. You destroy others' freedom by controlling them. You destroy your own by sinking into habits that kill vitality. You kill possibilities before they can demand responsibility from you. Fromm believed destructiveness was not always conscious. People don't wake up and say, "I will destroy." Instead, they slowly suffocate themselves through avoidance, addictions, endless distractions. They tear down others' dreams out of envy. They sabotage opportunities out of fear. It is destruction disguised as normal life, and you have felt shades of this too. That urge to avoid instead of act, that temptation to criticize instead of create, that habit of numbing yourself instead of facing silence. Destructiveness is not only in grand acts of violence. It is in the small ways you kill your own freedom every day. Together, these three escapes, conformity, authoritarianism, destructiveness, reveal the depth of our fear. We long for freedom, but once it is ours, we run from it. We merge into crowds, surrender to leaders, or sabotage ourselves, all because we fear the weight of responsibility. Fromm's warning is clear. The greatest danger is not losing freedom to others. The greatest danger is surrendering freedom yourself. But here lies the hope. Once you recognize these patterns, you can break them. Once you see how you conform, how you obey, how you destroy, you can choose differently. Awareness is the first act of true freedom. In the next part, we will explore how fear of freedom shapes every corner of your life, your relationships, your work, your politics, your inner self, and we will see how this fear manipulates you without your awareness, keeping you trapped in cycles you never chose. Because once you see freedom's shadow, you can begin to walk toward its light. Look around you. The fear of freedom is not abstract. It is not only in books or history. It is here, right now, woven into the fabric of your daily life. Fromm's insight was that freedom is not only a political condition, it is a psychological condition. And until you understand how fear of freedom plays out in your relationships, your work, your beliefs, even in your own mind, you will remain enslaved while thinking you are free. Start with relationships. Why do so many people lose themselves in love? Why do they abandon their individuality, their voice, their direction, as soon as they attach to another? Fromm believed that for many, love becomes an escape from freedom. To be free means to stand alone, to carry your own choices, to face the weight of existence. But in love, people often hand over that responsibility. They merge into the other, thinking, "Now I no longer stand alone. Now I belong. Now the burden is lifted." But this is not real love. This is dependency disguised as devotion. Instead of two free beings choosing to share life, it becomes two incomplete beings clinging to each other for relief. And the cost is individuality. You lose yourself to escape freedom, and in doing so, you lose the very self that could love authentically. You have seen this in your own life. Times when you said yes when you wanted no, just to avoid conflict. Times when you adopted another's dreams because choosing your own felt too heavy. Times when you silenced your voice because freedom in love felt risky. Each was a moment when fear of freedom controlled you. And then there is work. You were told work is the path to freedom. Earn money, gain independence, secure your life. But look closely. How many people are trapped in jobs they hate, yet never leave? How many submit to routines, bosses and systems, not out of passion, but out of fear? Work becomes not freedom, but obedience. People cling to stability because the thought of breaking free, of taking responsibility for their destiny, is terrifying. Fromm saw this clearly in the rise of industrial society. People left the external authority of tradition only to submit to the internal authority of corporations, machines, and schedules. They became free individuals who obeyed without chains. And today, the pattern continues. You may not wear shackles, but you feel bound all the same. Bound by bills, by expectations, by the silent fear that if you chose differently, you might fail. Politics, too, is shaped by the fear of freedom. Why do people vote for leaders who promise simple answers? Why do they cling to ideologies that strip away complexity? Because freedom demands thought, responsibility, courage. It demands you face uncertainty, and many cannot bear that. They would rather obey than think. They would rather be told what to believe than carry the weight of deciding for themselves. This is why authoritarian leaders rise, not because they take freedom by force, but because people surrender it willingly. They beg for order, for clarity, for direction. They trade freedom for certainty, individuality for belonging, responsibility for obedience. And history shows the cost is always the same: destruction. And then there is the self, the deepest arena of all. Fromm argued that the fear of freedom is not only about society, but about identity itself. To be free means to stand apart, to accept that you are unique, separate, responsible for your own existence. And that realization can feel unbearable. It means you cannot hide behind the crowd, or behind tradition, or behind excuses. You must face yourself, raw, unmasked, responsible. This is why so many people escape into distractions, roles, masks. They avoid silence because silence reveals the truth. They avoid solitude because solitude forces them to meet themselves. They avoid authenticity because authenticity demands responsibility. It is easier to live a borrowed life, to imitate others, to perform the role society approves of. It is safer to be anyone but yourself. But here is the tragedy. The more you escape freedom, the emptier you feel. You gain safety, but you lose meaning. You gain acceptance, but you lose authenticity. You gain order, but you lose yourself. And slowly, without even realizing it, you become hollow. You live, but you do not live. You breathe, but you do not exist. Fromm believed this is why modern humans feel so anxious, restless, disconnected. You have more freedom than any generation before, yet you are not at peace. Because freedom without responsibility becomes terror, and terror breeds escape. But what if you chose differently? What if, instead of running from freedom, you faced it? What if you accepted the loneliness, the risk, the responsibility? What if you bore the weight instead of fleeing from it? This is the question that opens the door to transformation, because in the next part, we will uncover how freedom, once embraced, becomes not terror, but strength. We will see how responsibility, once accepted, becomes not a burden, but a path to authenticity, and we will explore the practices, awareness, courage, action, that turn the fear of freedom into the power of freedom. Freedom, the very word stirs something inside you, a hunger, a longing, a promise. But by now you see the truth. Freedom is not only a gift, it is a weight. It demands responsibility, courage, authenticity. and most people run from it. They escape into conformity, into authority, into destruction. They surrender their birthright because the burden feels too heavy. But you are here, listening still, which means part of you is ready to stop running. Part of you is ready to face freedom, to embrace it, to carry it, to live it fully. So how do you do it? How do you turn the fear of freedom into the power of freedom? The first step is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Begin noticing the escapes in your own life. Where do you conform to avoid rejection? Where do you submit to authority to avoid responsibility? Where do you sabotage yourself to avoid risk? Write these moments down. Journaling is not just therapy, it is confrontation. The page holds up a mirror to your escapes, and once you see them, you cannot hide from them. The second step is courage. Awareness shows you the truth, but courage makes you act. Freedom will always feel terrifying because it means no one else is responsible for your choices. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite fear. Start small. Make one decision without asking for approval. Speak one truth you have been silencing. Take one risk you have been avoiding. Each act of courage strengthens the muscle of freedom. The third step is responsibility. Fromm believed responsibility is the core of authentic freedom. To be free is not to do whatever you want. To be free is to accept that your life, your choices, your destiny are yours alone. Stop blaming parents, partners, leaders, society. Yes, they influence you, but they do not own you. You are responsible. And that is terrifying, but it is also liberating. Because responsibility means you are no longer powerless. You hold the pen that writes your story. The fourth step is authenticity. Freedom without authenticity is hollow. If you are still wearing masks, still performing roles, still imitating others, you are not free. You are still escaping. To live authentically means to stand in your truth even when it is unpopular, even when it is misunderstood. It means to be willing to be different. And that is the ultimate act of freedom, to exist as yourself without apology. The fifth step is connection. Fromm argued that freedom without connection becomes isolation. True freedom is not about cutting ties, but about choosing them consciously. Love, friendship, community, these are not escapes if chosen authentically. They are affirmations of life. They are free beings choosing to walk together, to connect not out of fear, but out of strength. To love not to escape loneliness, but to celebrate individuality. And finally, the sixth step is creation. Fromm believed humans find meaning through creative action, not just art, but any form of expression that brings your inner truth into the world. To create is to say, I exist, I choose, I give shape to my freedom. Write, build, design, speak, dream, act. Do not wait for permission. Creation is the ultimate act of freedom. But here is the warning. This path is not easy. People will resist your freedom. They will call you selfish for refusing to conform. They will call you arrogant for thinking independently. They will call you reckless for taking responsibility. But what they are really saying is that your freedom threatens their escape. Your authenticity reveals their masks. Your courage confronts their fear. And so they attack. Do not be surprised. Do not be discouraged. This is the price of freedom, and it is worth it, because while others remain chained by invisible walls, you will walk in the open. While others suffocate in borrowed lives, you will breathe as yourself. While others wait for permission, you will create, and that is rare, that is unforgettable, that is free. Fromm's message is not easy, but it is liberating. Freedom will always terrify. But if you stop running, if you carry the weight, if you embrace responsibility, you discover something extraordinary. You discover that freedom, once faced, becomes strength. Responsibility becomes power. Authenticity becomes joy. And life, once unbearable, becomes meaningful. So now I ask you directly, will you keep escaping freedom, or will you embrace it? Will you keep hiding behind conformity, obedience, distraction? Or will you dare to stand alone, to carry the burden, to live authentically? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. Write it now in the comments. I choose awareness. And if you are ready to keep walking this path, subscribe, because this journey is only beginning. The fear of freedom is real, but so is the power of freedom, and it is waiting for you.